From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
So welcome to the Library of Congress Digital Future and You presentation on cataloging and publication, moving beyond the print. I'm Carl Debus Lopez, Chief of the U.S. Programs, Law, and Literature Division at the Library of Congress. I'm standing in for my supervisor, Beecher Wiggins, Director of Acquisitions and Bibliographic Access, who could not make it today. First, I want to thank Angela Kinney, Chief of the African, Latin American, and Western European Division, and Judith Cannon, Chief of the Cooperative and Instructional Programs Division, for the fantastic job they do pulling together these Digital Futures and You presentations. I'm very happy to introduce this presentation as the Cataloging and Publication Program reports to my division, as do our two presenters, Caroline Saccucci and Camilla Williams. The Cataloging and Publication, or as we call it, the CIP program, has been in existence for 42 years, creating pre-publication metadata for new U.S. publications from the nation's most significant trade, scholarly, and popular presses. It is well known to libraries, publishers, and the United States public, as most everyone has seen the cataloging and publication data block that appears on the verso of the title page of print publications. CIP metadata is also the principal source of copy cataloging records for new U.S. publications for libraries worldwide. Over the course of the last 42 years, CIP program staff have created metadata for 1,723,407 titles. Approximately 95% of the print and now electronic books we have received for free from the publishers through the program have been added to the Library of Congress's general collections. I think you'll enjoy today's presentation as it will demonstrate how it is possible to transition a successful and venerable print program, into something new that meets the library's pressing need to acquire electronic books published in the United States. Indeed, the ingestion system for eBooks received through the Cataloging and Publication Program will become a model for ingesting eBooks received through other acquisition streams. eBooks received from the Copyright Office, purchased eBooks, and gift eBooks. Now for the introduction of our two speakers. Caroline Saccucci is the Dewey Program Manager in the U.S. Programs, Law, and Literature Division. She is also currently the Acting CIP Program Manager and was a CIP Program Specialist. Prior to working with the CIP program, she was a Senior Cataloging Specialist in the Geography, Political Science, and Education section in the U.S. General Division. Caroline is an active member of the American Library Association and serves as the chair of the Elects Public Libraries Technical Services Interest Group and Dewey Section Liaison to the Elects Cataloging and Metadata Management Section Subject Analysis Committee. Camilla Williams is a program specialist in the Cataloging and Publication Program. Her responsibilities include responding to inquiries from publishers and cataloging staff, recruiting and training new libraries and institutions to the eCIP Cataloging Partnership Program, and participating in new automated and metadata initiatives. She also serves as the primary point of contact for the CIP E-Books program. Camilla regularly gives presentations and updates about the CIP program to the CIP Advisory Group and at the Library of Congress exhibit booth at American Library Association conferences.
Good morning. I want to welcome all of you to this. I'm glad to see so much interest in the cataloging publication program, the eBooks. And really we're focusing specifically on the CIP eBooks program, which is how we're moving beyond the print. So why CIP data for eBooks? The development of an initiative to create eCIP records for eBooks based on original CIP records for print books began in 2011 and has been a very exciting development. The CIP program decided to commit its resources to eBooks for several reasons. An obvious primary reason was expansion of its service to the nation's libraries. The need for accurate metadata for eBooks has been expressed by many libraries, and the overall library community has expressed great concern about the poor quality of eBook metadata received from vendors. Through expanding the CIP scope to include eBooks, we will be providing a service to the national and international library community. Another important reason was to provide service to publishers. A number of publishers have expressed interest in receiving CIP data for eBooks. We can see that a current publishing pattern is simultaneous publication of eBooks along with print versions of the same title. Publishers are able to use the same files that create the printed book to create the ebook format. This makes sense because it allows publishers to reach markets that still want print while at the same time expanding sales to the electronic market for the same title. Many publishers are also offering a package of print plus ebook. CIP data in the ebook and in distribution to libraries via OCLC, WorldCat, and vendors will assist publishers in reaching those markets. Our process for creating the CIP data, developed by cataloging automation specialist David Williamson, in concert with other LC programmers, takes the original CIP record for the print version of the book and converts it to a record for the e-version, adding the appropriate data elements that identify it as an ebook record, and we'll talk about that. Those data elements are taken from the provider-neutral e-monograph record guide, which was developed by the Program for Cooperative Cataloging, or PCC, to offer guidance on creating individual records for ebooks based on bibliographic information from the original publisher, unlike records supplied by aggregators of ebooks. The first stage of development was the publisher's application for CIP data for ebooks, which had to include a mechanism for capturing the LCCN, or the Library of Congress control number, assigned in the eCIP traffic manager, and sending it to the record creation application. That application would then capture data from the record previously created for the print book, add the LCCN, and incorporate identified data elements to create the ebook record. We began a pilot with 3 participants: the University Press of Mississippi, which is a consortium of the state's university presses, Wiley-Blackwell, including the imprint Jossie Bass, and World Bank. As part of the pilot, we developed an application to participate in order for the pilot publishers to confirm their understanding of the requirements of the eBooks program. Participating publishers must publish simultaneous print books and ebooks in order to participate, since the ebook record creation is based on the existing record for the print. They have to apply for CIP data for the print book first through our regular application process, which requires attachment of an electronic galley in ASCII format, which allows it to be accessed in the traffic manager for cataloging purposes. They must apply for the ebook CIP data within 10 business days, and the unaltered CIP data should be printed on each version's copyright page. Publishers would confirm that they market their ebooks to libraries. This was particularly important when we heard that major publishers had stopped marketing to public libraries. And once they started agreeing, then we would say, yes, you can participate. Publishers who participate are required to provide a complimentary copy of the ebook to the library when it is published, just as they do for print books. The CIP program requires a best edition for ebooks, just as it does for print books. This would be the EPUB or PDF version created by the original publisher, not altered for use by a particular reader, and with no digital rights management attached. This is required by the Library of Congress so that we can provide the same access to ebooks that we provide to print books that are received via the CIP program, and that there will be no limit on the number of times the book may be read. Our potential participants were contacted first by phone to provide them with a description of the pilot. After they expressed interest, they were sent a letter which detailed the requirements I just described. Once they agreed to the requirements, they were given access to the eBooks application and change request forms in the traffic manager beginning on October 11th, 2011, which was day 1 of the pilot. Only our 3 participating publishers had access to those forms. So now we're going to talk about the real metadata workflow. But first things first, I want to go over the CIP workflow for print material. Even though many of you in the room are familiar with the CIP workflow, or at least your piece of it, I did not want to assume that everyone here knows the process. The publisher, assuming it already has been approved to apply for CIP, which is its own process, applies for CIP data for an individual title. Those of you who have cataloged CIPs are already familiar with the application, which you know is the data view. But before you see the data view, it goes to the CIP publisher liaison who reviews the application, makes sure everything is in order, and that the attached galley is the right one. Once the liaison accepts the application is assigned an LCCN and is sent to the default cataloging section. The default is selected by the BISAC heading, which the publisher selected in the application for CIP data. For instance, Christian fiction will default to the literature section. Then the section either catalogs the resource or refers it to another section for cataloging if it's out of scope. Unless the cataloger has been trained to assign Dewey decimal numbers, the application is then forwarded to the Dewey section to assign the Dewey number. The Dewey section returns it to the CIP publisher liaison as complete. The publisher liaison then sends a formatted email with the CIP data block to the publisher, who then is supposed to print the CIP data block, the CIP data block in the book and send us a copy. The CIP technical team checks in all incoming CIP books and adds the holdings and item records before sending them to the sections for CIP verification. Once the book has undergone CIP verification, it can go to the stacks. Those who work on CIP material as a regular part of their day could tell you all about the idiosyncrasies related to processing eSIPs, but I hope that going over the basic steps will help you recognize how the CIP eBooks process both aligns with and differs from the regular print materials workflow. So this is the publisher's view of the traffic manager. The CIP program, working with IT staff, first had to create an application for eBooks based on the print edition application. As I said during the last slide, the publisher first has to apply for data for the print book. So this is the regular print version. Then after returning to the main menu, publishers participating in the pilot click on a link that says CIP data application for eBooks. So there has to be a purposeful decision to do that. When they click on the link, they retrieve a list of the print titles for which they have applied for which they've just applied. They select a title for which they also want to apply for an ebook. They retrieve a simplified CIP data application which has been pre-populated with the title and ISBN from the print book application. The only data elements that have to be entered are any ISBNs for the ebook qualified by format such as EPUB or PDF, and a series statement if there's a series that applies only to the ebook. Processing of the application begins with the assignment of a unique LCCN from an annual supply that is stored within the traffic manager. New programming retrieves the LCCN and ebook data elements supplied by the publisher, such as the ISBNs and any series information, if applicable. This data is then transferred to the application that creates the ebook record. The program retrieves the original record for the print book from the library's Voyager database, adds the supplied ebook data elements, including the new LCCN, and also adds standard data elements for ebooks, such as one online resource in the physical description field and a 776 field, which serves the purpose of linking the ebook record to the print record through the print LCCN and ISBN. So let's take a look at a bibliographic record for the print. You're all familiar with this probably. Please note the ISBNs for both the print and ebook versions, the LC classification in the 050 field and the Dewey Decimal Classification number in the 082 field, the author, title, publication, and series information, as well as all of Library of Congress subject headings. The record creation program accesses the catalog record for the print version of the title to create the ebook record. Note that there is a 776 field linking it to the ebook bibliographic record. This 776 is automatically added when the ebook record is derived. And that's actually a new feature, new-ish feature. When we first started the pilot, we didn't get the 776 field in the print version. We only had one going from the ebook to the print, but not from the print to the ebook. So this was a huge improvement, in my opinion, because that way they were linked. So now we're going to go ahead and discuss the ebook record creation. So here's the ebook record based on the print record we just saw on the previous slide. This is bibliographic record, the first ebook we ingested. The record creation program added the LCCN assigned by the traffic manager, as well as data elements such as ISBNs for the ebook, and inserted one online resource in the 300 physical description field. The LC classification stem and the Dewey decimal numbers are copied over, as well as any LC subject headings, which we will see on the next screen. Please note that the record is suppressed, as indicated in the checkbox near the top, suppressed from OPAC. All ebook records are automatically suppressed until we developed a way for readers to access the content. Here's the rest of the ebook record. Note that the 337 field indicates that this is a computer media type, and 338 field indicates that the carrier type is online resource. Note that the 588 field, which contains the text, description based on print version record and CIP data provided by publisher, resource not viewed. All of the ebook records created in the process have this standard note in them. So now you can see the various 6XX subject heading fields which were copied over from the print record. The other notable field is the 776 field, which serves as the purpose of linking the ebook record to the print record through the LCCN and ISBN. And then, as I mentioned previously, the print record also gets a 776 added, so the fields are reciprocating. This is what the publisher will see in the CIP data email. You can see one online resource, as well as description based on note, and all the ISBNs associated with the ebook listed first before the print. The linking note does not appear in the CIP data block. This data block should be printed on the copyright page of the ebook. Should be. Okay. During the pilot phase, the records created by this process were reviewed by CIP program specialists to determine whether any adjustments were needed to the programming to perfect the records. We sent the ebook CIP data to the publishers by email using a new version of the PubCIP application to create the email message with the data. We distributed the records to OCLC and other MARC record distributors, since a major purpose of the pilot was to provide these records for use by the library community. The Library of Congress is still in the process of developing a means to provide access to ebooks for our own readers, so the records will remain suppressed from our OPAC until the ebooks themselves can be made available. The Library of Congress management decided to move the pilot into production effective August 22nd, 2012. We put out a call for more publishers to participate. As of the end of fiscal year 2014, the CIP E-Books program has 143 participating publishers and has created metadata for 5,092 ebook titles, which is a tiny fraction of what we actually cataloged for print, but it's definitely a growing number. Even now, there's a lot more in the queue. We continue to work both internally at LC and with publishers to develop means for ingesting, storing, and making the actual ebook available to internal users at the Library of Congress. And last week, I attended the OCLC member forum held at Catholic University. While there, I attended the cataloging and metadata breakout session, which was led by Cynthia Whitaker, OCLC Department Manager, WorldCat Quality, and also the OCLC representative to the CIP Advisory Group. She explained that she manages the contract cataloging staff who update and enrich ebook records from vendors such as Overdrive. I asked if they search for records in WorldCat before they create new records or update vendor records, and she said they did search. Then I asked if they ever use CIP ebook records. She said they absolutely use our records, that they are the most complete and accurate records. She mentioned that vendors such as the Yankee Book Peddler are definitely using our records in their ebook packages for libraries, which I thought was an extremely useful, it made my day to go there to hear her say that. So now I'm going to turn the program over to Camilla Williams, who's going to talk about how we're getting the ebooks.
All right, so once we had the metadata portion in place, it was time then to move into receiving the ebooks for which we had provided CIP data. The representatives from the CIP program began meeting with staff in other areas of the library for their expertise. The CIP eBooks group included staff from the CIP program, the ILS office, ITS, and RDC, the Repository Development Center. There were also other representatives from ABA and copyright staff who were included for their expertise in other ebook electronic programs. So we began meeting with ITS and RDC. ITS will be setting up the server space and moving the ebooks from outside the firewall to inside the firewall, where the ebooks will remain until LC staff process them and they will move to long-term storage. RDC staff will be developing the software that LC staff would use to view and process the ebooks. The group decided to use the same publishers that were a part of the metadata pilot of the eBooks program: University of Press in Mississippi, Wiley-Blackwell, and World Bank. We learned that some publishers, such as World Bank, relied on aggregators to send their ebooks to various online booksellers, which started around a discussion with ITS about file paths and directories. In consultation with ITS, the eBooks group decided that publishers would push their eBooks files to the Library of Congress using Secure File Transfer Protocol, or SFFTP. The group developed a publisher account form where we would ask for the name and contact information for the person primarily responsible for sending the ebook, as well as the IP address. The IP address would be used to ensure that we are receiving the ebooks from the correct company. And also realizing that the publishers will be using aggregators to send the ebooks to the Library of Congress, the group determined that ITS staff would need to distinguish between who was sending the content and who was providing the content. The content provider is the publisher. The content center is the aggregator who would be sending the content on behalf of their clients. ITS would use this information to establish the publisher and aggregator accounts and directories on the Library of Congress servers. After many discussions, we decided that they would create a CIP directory ingest folder, and any publisher that sent their own ebooks would have their own directory, and the aggregator would have their own folder, and they would be responsible for pushing their content on behalf of their client to the right folder. After the publisher sent their ebooks to LC and the ebooks go through malware scanning and other ITS-required automated processes, staff from the CIP program would log into the Library of Congress Content Transfer System, Repository Services, to access and process the ebooks. The Content Transfer Service is an in-house developed software that is used by many divisions in the Library of Congress. It is used to move files from temporary storage locations to long-term storage. It was modified by RDC to be used by the CIP E-Books Program. Our repository services monitors the server space allocated to the CIP program and moves any ebooks found on the server into the content transfer system awaiting processing by the CIP program. And just to show a little bit of the repository services system, the CIP check-in manager logs into the system and sees all the unassigned ebooks and distributes them to staff members for processing. The CIP check-in page shows brief instructions to the check-in managers and staff on how to process the ebooks. Viewing the ebook, the repository services software has an embedded viewer where we can look at the ebooks. And here we see from World Bank, working through the crisis is the ebook to be processed. We can also navigate through the ebook. We have arrows on either side of the embedded viewer, or we can also use the table of contents provided by the publisher for the book. Moving to the copyright page, we're looking at the CIP data block. Also, if you notice just a little bit, that the ebook is actually the one provided for the print book, which we know is a common problem, which we discussed earlier. Going back to the check-in page, the software program is able to get the LCCN from Voyager and also the title. We also have a handle suffix, which will be inserted into the holdings record for authorized LC staff to access the ebook. Continuing down the check-in page, we see that we can accept with conditions, or even reject the ebook. At this time, we're only accepting ebooks that have been applied for CIP data. I'm sorry. So if everything is perfect or just about perfect, we would accept the ebook. And if there is no ebook record on file in Voyager, we will have to reject it, because unfortunately we're not able to accept those ebooks. And just showing the completed ebook record after the CIP check-in has been completed. If you notice at the top, it is still suppressed from the OPAC because we have not developed a process for viewing the ebook. In the 955, it says that the book has been received. And we also delete the 263 and the 963 fields as we do for the print records. And here is the holding record. The handle suffix that was in the repository services software is in here in the 856. This URL is for the ebook record that is in the library's holdings and not a part of the publisher's website. After months of discussion and quality control, user testing, the ingest portion of the CIP E-Books program moved into production on July 16, 2014, just this past summer. This is a perfect example of how multiple units from different areas in the library can successfully work together to complete a complex technical project. We accepted 5 to 10 ebooks from each publisher in EPUB and PDF formats, and so far the CIP program has received 120 ebooks. The first ebook to be processed and accepted into long-term storage was The Ugly Caterpillar by Carl Summers. And this ebook was sent to us by Advanced Publishing. Also, at the end of October, we have added 15 publishers total to the program. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Caroline for next steps.
So we've identified several next steps for the CIP E-Books program, and I'm sure others will be identified in the coming months. For now, we know that we will want to include more publishers and get more e-content for the library's collections. We have already identified publishers we want to contact, and our target is to ingest 2,500 ebooks this fiscal year with significant increases in future years. And we're on target to do that so far. One of the concurrent initiatives of the CIP program is the design of a revised CIP data block. Part of that redesign effort is to develop a composite print and e-version CIP data block. As Camilla noted, publishers tend to use the same file for the print and e-versions so that the print CIP data is in the e-version, which is not always helpful. If we were able to develop a single CIP data block for both versions, then publishers would not need to worry about which CIP data block version to use. Another step to increase the number of ebooks we can get is to make the application process more streamlined. As I mentioned earlier, publishers need to apply first for the print CIP data and then go back to the main menu, and then select the title for the ebook application, then submit the ebook CIP data application. If we could streamline this process, it would probably encourage more publishers to participate. Right now, we are focused solely on simultaneously published print e-files. The next developments would be to begin creating metadata for born digital ebook titles, and then also to begin ingesting those. And finally, a major initiative is to be able to provide access to the ebooks and to our readers. We know that we can successfully create the metadata, ingest the ebooks, and put them in long-term storage, but we want the Congress as well as our readers to have access to this content as well. We look forward to the long-term development of the CIP E-Books program at the Library of Congress. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline and Camilla. We will take questions now, and the three of us will answer them as best we can.
When do you expect the 776 to be added to the print records that would coordinate with the eCIP record?
Right. So as soon as the ebook record is created automatically, the print record is updated automatically.
Okay, so
it's
you're
part of
gonna
the derivation process.
So you'll see that at the CIP Ver stage, rather
It would definitely appear. It would actually before the CIP Ver stage. I mean, it would if you went back. The ebook application. I'm sorry. The ebook CIP data is created within a day or two. Once the print is done, the publisher liaison sends the print to the CIP data to the publisher. There's logic in the programming that says, okay, now do the ebook version. And so at that time, which is within a day or two, then the 776 is added. So really within days of the completed CIP data for the print. Yeah.
You seem to have a way of getting the 776 without manually typing it in. If so, that would really be nice for everyone else to be able to use, because right now, while we're authorized to use 776s and those fields in the high 700s, there's a strong disincentive because you have to type it in.
Right.
If you could just have some magic program that would say, this LCCN, turn it, format it, and put it in the 776. It has many other uses, like for weird additions, changes in publisher, related additions, translations, et cetera. So just how are you doing it, and is this something that the rest of us could eventually find a way to use?
So the answer regarding the 776 field for the CIP data and the ebook versions of CIP data is that David Williamson, who's not here to receive accolades, but he's a magician, managed to create programming that would generate it automatically. I mean, in a perfect world, that would be the case for all of our records, that they could be generated automatically. And I understand that the 776 field is a valuable thing. So Who knows? I think it's a very good question. I think it's a good thing to implement if possible. I know that for a while we were not able to use the 776 field in the print records. We were only permitted to put them in the ebook version. And fortunately, we got the go-ahead from the policy office to put them in the print records. So, because it could be automatically done. I don't think we want to be keying things in, as you pointed out. So.
I'm just really curious about why the decision was made to take only the subfield A of the print call number and put it in the in the ebook record, because especially as we're ingesting more and more of these, we're going to end up with a whole bunch at the very top of any call number that don't have any rhyme or reason to it. Whereas if we take the whole call number, the print version, once they're unsuppressed, the print version in the shelf list will be right next to the ebook version, which might be helpful for the user. So I'm just wondering what the logic was behind that.
I want to say that has to do with what was in the PCC provider neutral e-monograph guidelines. It was not something that we came up with on our own. I think it was in the PCC documentation. So I'll have to go back and double check, but we did not come up with this ebook record format out of our own sort of volition. We definitely used what documentation there was.
I have two questions. Can you tell us the delay in having readers access the content of the ebooks and when you anticipate that will happen?
Well, we all want to have access to these ebooks, particularly when our goal is to expand the program and get many thousands more. And quite frankly, we want to try to transition the program over many years to be more electronic than print. However, there are a lot of policy-related issues that need to be addressed, as well as technical issues. Caroline and I are actually beginning these discussions by meeting with the Office of General Counsel to talk about a terms and conditions page that the publishers would then agree to as to how we can use these ebooks. So it's transparent to them what we're going to do. But even after we get this terms and conditions page put into draft format, it has to be reviewed by multiple committees and individuals here. I'm sort of hoping that perhaps by the end of this fiscal year, we will have the policies and perhaps maybe the functional requirements set up, but certainly not have the access yet. And of course, I have to defer to the technical staff here in terms of when we can actually have an ebook viewer for the CIP e-books available for staff and users to use. So we're focusing first on the policies and functional requirements during this year, and then after that, we will probably be looking more at the technologies that we could use to serve up the e-books to our users.
Thank you. And my second question has to do with born digital titles. You had indicated in one of your slides that you're interested in seeking out ebooks that are born digital. Have you had success in locating those? Are there many publishers that are producing born digital materials for ebooks?
Well, first of all, we did start purposefully with with publishers that were publishing both print and electronic, and many publishers, most publishers in the United States at least, are still doing that. Most of the major ones, because they have two revenue flows from getting both the print purchases and the electronic book purchases. And with the help of David Williamson, our automation liaison for ABA, we were able to, I don't want to say easily, but we were able to develop this whole system so that we could create the metadata for the ebook based on the print. The next step, you're absolutely right, is to look at publishers and books that are being published that are just in electronic format. So we're going to be looking into that again within the next year or so to see how we can easily incorporate that into the program. The majority of the publishers in the United States are still doing both print and electronic. However, Shamel Padgett in the audience, who's our CIP publisher liaison team leader, mentioned that she does get queries from publishers who want to know about being able to just work with electronic only titles. So obviously it's growing, and I'm certain that there are some publishers that only focus on the electronic, because in some respects that's easier than having to have a whole print operation set up. So this has been a success because we have linked it to the print, but we're going to have to go beyond that and have both the capability of doing the print plus electronic and the electronic only. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and attention, and we appreciate your interest in what we're doing.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.